Hey everybody, I'm Billy Norden. I'm the Retirement and Financial Education Coordinator for the RCA Board of Benefit Services.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna Radcliffe. I'm the Director of Future Church Innovation for the RCA.
So this is called Jumpstart, where we're here to help you and your congregation get unstuck, wherever you might be feeling stuck.
Throughout this video series, we'll offer stories, personal stories, and congregational stories of leaders who have gotten stuck and how they've gotten unstuck. We'll offer you research and data about current opportunities and current ways in which people are getting unstuck, and we have some grant opportunities to offer you. This is Jumpstart. We're back. We're back with leadership today, talking through one of the thriving characteristics of a healthy church, but also healthy ministry. And so leadership is our topic for today.
Yeah, something that most of our audience needs to engage in, right?
Right. Super hard to engage in.
Yeah. And we're the best at it.
Yes, we're the best. We're the best leaders. So for Renovations, which again, if you're just tuning in, is our program at the RCA to help support congregations as they distill their mission and vision. And there's 7 characteristics of a healthy congregation that we've sort of tried and tested. We had it kind of run across the board of different denominations and different leaders to say, what do you think of these characteristics? And they all came back to us and said, yep, those fit right within what we're kind of developing as well.
Yeah, and from my end, the Board of Benefit Services is about caring for the well-being of pastors, and we do that so that the church can flourish, so that pastors can feel well, be well, and lead well.
Yeah, oh, it's so good. So leadership kind of has 2 components to it. One is like the personal renewal, revitalization. How are you being sustained and how are you growing as a person? But then the other aspect is, as a leader, you should also be looking for other leaders. How are you identifying them? Do you have a way in which you're clearly communicating that you're leading and you're working to train up and lead that leader? And so, yeah, I think one of the biggest things for leadership is just registering that you have to lead yourself well. You have to be taking care of your heart. We just continue to see numbers skyrocketing of pastors leaving ministry because they're exhausted, because the demands are too high. Another colleague just came in yesterday on a Zoom call, and she was like, I just heard pastor is number 3 on the list of hardest jobs in the world. It's not easy.
No, it's not. And there are barriers to seeking growth, help, wellness, right? There's so many things in the way of that. Well, I mean, what have you experienced in your life and with the people you work with?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me as a leader is being younger. And for a lot of younger people, it tends to be, there's a lot of interactions that I have where it's like, oh, you're just young. Oh, you'll get to this someday. The assumption that I haven't experienced kind of the weight of burnout, or the assumption that I don't understand how a church is run in the way that it is currently operating. I totally don't know everything, like a lot of things. And I shared a story last time about how we failed and are currently failing in some ways. But I think when as a leader who's younger, when it feels like you're being underestimated, it doesn't want me to stay. Like, it doesn't make me want to stay and be a leader here.
Yeah.
And so that's been hard. I think that continues to be hard for a lot of my younger friends who are in ministry. There's just sort of this expectation that we will learn eventually. And we will. We totally will. But when people communicate that they're underestimating you, that makes it really challenging.
It makes it really hard to ask for help when you feel underestimated, because then you feel like you have to prove yourself in a way that's unhealthy.
It's a vicious, unhealthy cycle. It's awful.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think about a lack of mentorship, I think, in points in my ministry, and this is like a very next-gen thing, right, where you realize the power of good mentoring relationships. And I see that as I work even with different denominations that are working towards this. They want good mentoring relationships for younger ministers, but they're not finding folks that are equipped to do that well. Yeah. And so that's a barrier.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this book, Growing Young, insert here, and it talks a lot about how we as leaders need to start thinking about our leadership differently. And one of the stories that they use is here in the States, we often do driver's education. And so what that means is you're getting into a car, you have an adult who's in the passenger seat, but they have the stop and go, and they hand you the keys. And as the leader, you're or as the young person, you're driving, but you have someone who's instructing you. The same is probably true when you take your kid then after driver's training. You don't just give them your car and say good luck. You have to take them on driver's hours. You have to kind of walk them through the 60 plus hours. And as they're driving, you're instructing them or giving them wisdom. Like one of the most common ones I'll never forget was, I'm sitting in the passing lane so frustrated because everyone on the highway is flying past me. And to me, it feels more dangerous being the one who's just kind of sitting there anxiously. And my dad just leaned over and he was like, Anna, just go the speed of traffic. Right? That's not a legit rule. There's nothing in and if I'm going too fast with the speed of traffic, I can get pulled over.
Sure, but there's wisdom.
Totally. There's wisdom in going the speed of traffic. And so, yeah, I totally am resonating with what you're saying. The idea of keychain leadership is you're not just handing the keys over to a young person or to a person and saying, good luck, I hope you do well. You're handing them the keys and you're bringing them alongside. And just to contextualize this, I'm very passionate about this. Just to contextualize this, we do this as churches. If you look at our data, one of the most significant drop-offs in a congregation of decline is pastoral transition. Any pastoral transition. It can be a great one. It can be a terrible one.
Sure.
It leads to people leaving the church. Now, what if we practiced keychain leadership with our leadership transitions? Rather than saying, I'm done in 2 weeks, you have a search team, we have some people coming in. What if there was some synergy around kind of helping the pastor who's planning to leave? Now, some circumstances we can't do that.
Sure.
But we know that there are many pastors who are looking to retire. What does it look like for those retirees to start to identify a younger leader within their midst or within the community to say, hey, you have some real ministry gifts?
Could that be a pinnacle moment for the congregation?
Oh my goodness. As a young person, to have someone say, I see this in you, and to communicate that to me directly is life-changing.
Yeah.
Because you're being seen, and the minister then is also being seen for their role. Their job description is changing, right? They're no longer leading the congregation because that young person is starting to drive. But they're continuing to implement the wisdom in which they've had when there's certain experiences.
Yeah, so how can we reframe typically difficult moments in the life of ministry, knowing that they're going to happen, right? It's not a surprise, and reframe it so that this could be a really positive experience for pastors and for congregational leaders. And as I think about all of the barriers that I've experienced towards growing as a pastor, I know for me, and I'm an Enneagram 7,
okay.
right? So I avoid
super fun.
I avoid pain at all costs. And when things get so bad, I often don't want to look at it.
Yeah, right.
I just want to pretend that it doesn't exist because I know that opening it up and actually bringing it into the light is going to feel really bad at first.
Yeah, it
hurts. But we know that is the only way
to
growth, right? It just gets worse if you ignore it. And so I think for a lot of my colleagues, for me, when things get bad, which they will in ministry, if we don't have the capacity, the resilience to look at it or to ask for help from a trusted friend to look at it together, there's not a lot of hope. So that's a barrier. How can we get better at saying, I'm going to enter into the pain?
Yeah, that's so good. I think one of the biggest parts about leadership is that it can feel so isolating. And when we create these spaces very intentionally, when we're thoughtful about community as leaders, not just kind of putting on the posture of I can do this myself, the other kind of old phrase is pulling myself up by my bootstraps. Leadership is not about solving the problem yourself. Leadership is about having the wisdom to know when to ask for help and who to seek wisdom from.
Yeah.
It's just so important. You were talking a little bit earlier about some things that you've seen, particularly as it relates to ministerial wealth and ministers. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's all of these tie-ins to the things we avoid to how we need to lead in churches, right? We want to model what Jesus calls us to.
Yeah.
We want to model that for people, and not in the unhealthy pedestal sort of way, just in the way that says, we believe in this, we want to lead the way because we want to show you a better way of living, right? So people often think, well, finances are separate from all this. No, they're not, right? Jesus talks about it all the time. The church needs finances to do its ministry well. We need finances in our lives to thrive, right? We have basic needs to meet. And so many ministers get in really precarious financial situations. And it feels like when you're in that situation, I can't tell other people to give.
Totally.
Or,
oh my gosh.
or how to manage their money.
I'm like,
who am I to go up and say this
Yeah.
when I feel like I'm a mess behind the scenes? And
Yeah.
it's money, so we don't share that with each other.
Totally. Nope.
So what does it look like then, from our perspective, to help ministers clean up some debt or catch up for retirement savings, to get them paired with a financial planner who can actually give them hope for a stable, long-term well-being picture? And then that minister can go up and say, ooh, I just experienced this transformation in my finances.
Yeah.
And I believe it, you can too. And
Yeah.
I'm going to lead the way by giving what we say that we should give, by encouraging you to talk about it in a way that's vulnerable,
Yep.
in a way that we usually avoid.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you start to see people saying, okay, this is no longer a taboo subject. This is out in the open, and I want help, and I want to do what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're reminding me of a time we were financially buying a house, and we had received one of these grants. And so we had kind of had the training. We knew that we wanted to pay off some debt. And then all of a sudden, we're in the middle of closing on this house, and we realized that there was some taxes that we didn't know were due. It was COVID, communication was really horrible.
It's like a gut punch.
Totally.
Isn't it?
It was like, we can't buy this house. We can't buy this house because we have to use that payment on a tax thing. And we can't sign the mortgage because this outstanding tax bill is due and they won't move through with it. So what we were able to do was call you and say, hey, we just really messed up. We didn't know that we had this bill. Can we pivot this material? And you totally kind of walked us through it. You helped us understand some of the implications of the financial pieces, and then you connected us back with Ben at Everence, the financial planning business. You just said maybe a conversation would be good with them, and we said we think so as well. But there's just, I share that because I want people to know, like, we're not experts in this. We're learning just as quickly as everybody else is. And just kind of one last piece as it relates to financial wealth. I think being a younger person who was not trained in these areas of finance, it's really helpful to have a space where I can just ask what feels like stupid questions, and know that you're a space that you're like, if you don't know, you're more willing to say, well, you should ask this person, or I'll connect you with this person. It's just really helpful to have a conduit and some space where I'm like, I know I'm not going to be treated like a dummy for what I'm saying.
I think that's the value that so many of our staff bring to this, is like, we're not like a look down on you type, or, oh, you're not the type of pastor that we're looking for. This is like, no, we've been there. Like, there's no dumb questions, and that's where the growth happens.
Yeah.
When we can actually be honest and vulnerable with each other and learn from each other.
Totally.
So a question for you as we kind of probably come to a close for this session is, you're talking about, or you're facilitating some grants that are really impacting churches to do creative, innovative things, and you see it played out in different ways. How do you see that connecting to modeling leadership, one of your grant initiatives?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you asked, because there is a new grant that I wanted to kind of talk to us a little bit about. So we're doing a Jumpstart Your Leadership grant, which one of the biggest pieces of leadership is what we talked about, that modeling space, the mentoring space. And we have there's a lot of support in the RCA as far as coaching goes, as far as investment in the personal leadership development of the pastor. And I use pastor very intentionally, because a lot of our contributions, or the things that we offer, go to ministers of word and sacrament. But there's not a lot of information or a lot of support for raising up younger leaders. Mm-hmm. So the new grant opportunity is, if there is a young person, or if you're kind of working on thinking about leadership development in your congregation, if you have an idea of how you might start investing in the future of your congregation by supporting leadership development, that can be offering a youth ministry kind of support. It can be working with leaders to help them start to understand what it means to take over the congregation, to be the leader of the congregation. If it's like you don't have a treasurer or you don't have an elder or deacons training and they've never been formed before, like that is a way that you can approach this new grant.
Oh, what a good resource.
Let's invest in our leaders so that they're trained very, very well. So that's this new grant. There'll be more information sent out soon. But if you follow us on social media, the RCA's social media, we're also going to be kind of putting information out there of both your grants and my grants.
Yes, it's a great way to just hear about them when they come out, be the first to apply, and don't be scared to apply either, right?
Yeah.
Have that conversation with us rather than treating it like one other thing, or I don't know if I trust them. Like, have a conversation, feel it out.
Totally. Cheers.
Cheers.
Jumpstart.
Jumpstart.